Welcome back to English Flow Conversations. Simpler ways to correct them. I'm Mike, and today we're diving into something really important: common English mistakes and the smarter.
I'm Anna. This episode is going to help you understand why these mistakes happen and how to fix them naturally. Not through memorization, but through understanding. Because understanding is what builds long-term confidence.
Exactly, and most of the mistakes learners make are actually very normal. They're not signs of bad English, just patterns carried over from your first language. Once you recognize them, they're easy to correct.
Yes, and I think the first thing learners should know is that mistakes aren't a problem by themselves. Speaking through mistakes, that's how improvement happens. Problem is feeling afraid of them. When you avoid speaking because of mistakes, that slows your growth.
Absolutely. Mistakes are indicators. They show you where your language is growing. The more you notice them, the more you understand what to adjust. The aim isn't perfection, it's clarity and confidence.
No, it's interesting. A lot of these common mistakes aren't about grammar difficulty, they're about choosing the right form at the right time. Sometimes learners translate too directly from their mother tongue, and that creates unnatural phrasing.
One example we see often is confusion between speaking about general habits versus speaking about the current moment. Learners sometimes mix them because their first language uses one form for both. English feels more complicated, but actually, the logic is simple once you see it.
Another big one is prepositions, people worrying about choosing in, on, at, and so on. Instead of memorizing rules, it's better to get used to how native speakers use them in real sentences. Real usage trains your instinct far better than trying to memorize charts.
Exactly, and honestly, even native speakers get prepositions wrong when they learn another language. So it's not that English is hard, it's just different. And once you expose yourself to patterns, it becomes natural.
Know what's funny? Many learners think improving English means learning complicated, advanced grammar. Actually, most problems come from very basic things: sentence order, articles, tenses, and direct translation.
Articles, especially and the, they may look small, but they confuse learners everywhere. The problem is not that articles are hard. It's that many languages simply don't use them, so learners have to develop a new habit.
Exactly. And the key word is habit. Correct English comes from habits, not rules. You repeat something correctly enough times, it becomes automatic.
Good thing is you don't have to fix every mistake at the same time. Focus on the mistakes you make most often. Your weak areas the way you would look at a gym workout, one muscle at a time.
Love that analogy. You don't train every muscle in one day, you focus on one area until it becomes stronger. Language learning works the same way.
Talk about pronunciation mistakes for a moment. A lot of people feel embarrassed about their accent or sound. Having an accent isn't a problem. The real issue is clarity.
A strong accent is okay. An unclear accent is what causes misunderstanding. So instead of trying to sound like a native speaker, aim to sound understandable and confident.
Here's the interesting thing: most pronunciation mistakes aren't about the sound itself. It's about speaking too fast or not opening your mouth enough.
So slow down, breathe. and let the sounds come out fully. English needs more mouth movement than many other languages.
A common mistake is word stress. Learners often put stress on the wrong syllable, and it changes the whole meaning. Again, this isn't about being good at English. It's simply practice.
Listening helps so much here. The more you listen to natural English podcasts, conversations, the more your brain picks up the rhythm automatically.
Also, talk about confidence mistakes. Not grammar confidence. Many learners hesitate, pause too much, use filler words because they're unsure whether what they're saying is correct.
Yes, and that hesitation sometimes creates more mistakes than the sentence itself. You speak confidently, your sentence flows naturally, even if you make a small error.
Confidence grows when you remove pressure. Don't think I must speak perfectly. Instead, think I want to communicate clearly.
And sometimes the biggest mistake learners make is not speaking at all. Silence is the enemy of fluency.
Exactly. Your English doesn't improve in your head. It improves when you use it. Even if you speak to yourself, narrate your day, describe what you're doing, it trains your brain.
That's the thing. Fluency comes from familiarity, not fear. The more comfortable you are with the language, the fewer mistakes you make.
Another interesting point, many common mistakes come from choosing direct translations instead of natural expressions. This happens because learners aren't exposed to enough real English.
Yes, and the solution is simple: immerse yourself. Listen to how English speakers phrase everyday ideas. You'll notice that English uses shorter, simpler structures than many languages.
And once you start recognizing those natural patterns, your mistakes naturally reduce without studying any grammar rule.
Exactly. Real usage teaches better than any textbook. That's why conversations like this are so helpful. Your brain hears natural English and starts absorbing the structure unconsciously.
And that's why focusing on the most common patterns helps so much. Fix the top 10 mistakes, and your fluency level jumps dramatically.
Right. Don't worry about rare grammar. Focus on mistakes that happen every day.
And that wraps up part 1. In part 2, we'll go deeper into why these mistakes happen and how small mindset shifts can fix them permanently.
Stay with us, part 2 is coming next.
Welcome back to part 2. Now that we've talked about why common English mistakes happen, let's go deeper into the mindset behind correcting them. Because honestly, correcting mistakes is more about how you think than how you speak.
Absolutely. Many learners believe that speaking English correctly comes from studying grammar, but in reality, it comes from building awareness. You become aware of what sounds right and what doesn't. That awareness grows the more you listen and speak.
Yes, and one of the biggest mindset mistakes is thinking, if I don't know the perfect sentence, I shouldn't speak at all, but speaking imperfect English is always better than saying nothing.
Exactly. Think about how children learn their first language. They make hundreds of mistakes, but they speak freely. And over time, those mistakes naturally disappear because they keep trying. Adults forget this. They want perfection instantly.
And perfection is not the goal, clarity is. If people understand you, you're already doing great. From there, you refine slowly, mistake by mistake.
Another mindset problem is focusing too much on things you don't know. Learners sometimes freeze because they're busy thinking about the grammar rule they forgot. Instead, focus on what you can say build from what you know.
Yes, you don't need advanced vocabulary to sound confident. Even simple English can sound fluent if spoken smoothly. Some of the most confident speakers use basic structures, they just use them well.
A lot of mistakes happen because learners try to create overly complicated sentences. But English prefers simplicity. Short, clear sentences reduce mistakes dramatically.
And not only that, short sentences build confidence. When you speak in shorter pieces, you can correct yourself faster and avoid confusion.
Another common problem is hesitation fillers saying you know too much. It often comes from fear of saying something wrong. But remember, pauses are natural. You don't need to fill every silence.
Yes, and native speakers pause too. Think of silence as part of the rhythm of speaking, not a sign of uncertainty. When you pause confidently, it actually makes you sound more fluent.
That's true. And here's something important. Many mistakes come from thinking in your first language. This creates a natural sentence order. But when you think in English, even in simple English, structure becomes smoother.
I tell my students, don't translate, transform. Transform your thoughts into English, even if you use basic words. Over time, the structure becomes automatic.
And one of the best ways to do that is to practice thinking out loud. Describe what you're doing. Talk to yourself. It sounds silly, but it builds fluency faster than silently memorizing grammar.
Exactly, and let's talk about listening. Poor listening exposure causes a lot of mistakes. If you rarely hear native English, your brain won't naturally pick up the patterns and you'll continue making the same errors.
That's why podcasts, movies, and real conversations are so powerful. When learners hear English used naturally, they begin to notice small details, word stress, tone, connectors, and phrasing. And that helps correct mistakes without effort.
Another major mistake is overusing certain words. Learners often repeat the same vocabulary because they're unsure about synonyms. But you don't need big vocabulary, you just need the right vocabulary.
Yes, and sometimes using a simple, correct word is better than using a difficult one incorrectly. Mistakes often come from trying to sound advanced. But English fluency comes from clarity, not complexity.
And here's something important. Many learners don't correct their mistakes because they don't hear their own mistakes. Recording yourself is a powerful solution. When you listen to your own voice, you notice things you never realized while speaking.
True, even small things like dropping the S in plurals or stressing the wrong word become obvious on recordings, and awareness leads to correction.
Another thing we see is learners trying to fix everything at once, and that creates frustration. You don't need to correct every mistake immediately. Focus on one pattern at a time.
Yes, choose one area, prepositions, or articles, or tenses, and practice noticing it. Once it becomes natural, move to the next. This step-by-step approach prevents overwhelm.
And remember, correcting mistakes doesn't mean stopping every time you say something wrong. That disrupts your flow. Instead, correct yourself naturally, just like native speakers do.
And that's a key point. Native speakers also correct themselves mid-sentence all the time. They restart, rephrase, change words. That's normal speech. So if you do it too, you're not making a mistake, you're communicating naturally.
Another common mistake is using overly formal language because learners think it sounds more correct. But conversational English is much simpler. Using formal words in casual situations makes your English sound unnatural.
Yes, and using overly formal grammar can make communication feel stiff. Relax your tone, speak like a real person, not like a textbook.
And that brings us to another big area: intonation. Many mistakes are not grammar mistakes at all, they're tone mistakes. If your tone sounds flat, people may misunderstand your meaning.
Intonation shows emotion, emphasis, and clarity. When you change your tone, listeners understand your intention better, and it prevents many communication mistakes.
Before we wrap up part 2, let's highlight something crucial. Mistakes are temporary, but confidence is permanent. If you grow your confidence, accuracy follows naturally.
Exactly. Confidence creates fluency, and fluency reduces mistakes. It's a cycle, so focus on building your comfort with the language, and the mistakes will repair themselves over time.
That brings us to the end of part 2. In part 3, we'll talk about mastering natural English patterns and how to reduce mistakes permanently through simple daily habits.
Stay tuned, part 3 is coming next.
Welcome back to part 3. So far, we've talked about why common English mistakes happen and how mindset affects your progress. Now, let's dive into how learners can truly master natural English and reduce mistakes permanently.
Yes, because correcting mistakes isn't a one-time effort. It's something that becomes part of your daily practice. The good news is, the more natural English you use, the fewer mistakes you make without even thinking.
Exactly, and one of the biggest keys to long-term improvement is exposure. The more your brain hears natural English, the more it adapts. Mistakes don't magically disappear. Your brain gradually replaces old habits with new, correct ones.
Think about how you learned your native language. You didn't memorize grammar rules. You absorb them from repeated exposure. English works the same way. The more you surround yourself with real conversation, the more your brain understands the patterns.
And that's where consistency comes in. People sometimes expect improvement after 1 week of practice. But language grows like a plant, little by little. Every day you feed it, it becomes stronger.
Yes, and that's why daily habits matter so much. Even 10 minutes a day is enough to rewire your brain if you do it consistently. Consistency corrects more mistakes than studying for hours at once.
One thing we should talk about is overthinking. Many learners correct themselves too much, even when their sentence is already fine. This actually creates more mistakes because it interrupts their natural flow.
And overthinking usually comes from fear of being judged, fear of sounding wrong, fear of making a small error. But communication is not about perfection. It's about connection.
Exactly, and when learners focus on connection, their speaking becomes smoother, clearer, and more natural. They stop worrying about every tiny mistake.
Another thing that helps is building instinct. When you listen to enough natural English, you start recognizing what sounds right. You don't need to think about grammar, your brain develops a sense for the language.
Yes, and instinct is powerful. It's the same instinct that helps you speak your native language without thinking about rules. Once you develop that for English, most mistakes disappear automatically.
And instinct grows through repetition, not memorizing rules, repeating real, natural English patterns until they become second nature.
And here's something important: you don't need to speak to a native speaker every day to improve. You can practice by thinking in English, watching English content, or even speaking to yourself. Your brain doesn't care who you're talking to, it just needs to practice.
And mistakes become easier to correct when you're relaxed. Students who treat English like a relaxed part of their life improve much faster than those who treat it like a test.
Speaking of tests, perfectionism is one of the biggest causes of repeated mistakes. Learners try to speak correct textbook English instead of real conversational English.
Yes, and real English is flexible. It has rhythm, tone, shortcuts, pauses, and natural phrasing. When you allow yourself to speak naturally, you make fewer mistakes.
And that brings us to confidence again. Confident speakers make mistakes too, but they move past them quickly. That momentum is what keeps your fluency improving.
Confidence actually reduces mistakes because it removes tension. When learners relax, their pronunciation becomes clearer, their grammar becomes smoother, and their speech flows better.
Exactly, and the more you speak, the more confidence builds. It's a loop: speak more, become more confident. Become more confident, make fewer mistakes.
Something else learners often forget is identity. When you speak English, you're not trying to be someone else. You're expressing your ideas in another language. When you embrace your own style, speaking becomes far more natural.
Yes, and that's why reducing mistakes isn't just about grammar, it's about finding your natural English voice. Some people speak slowly and clearly, others speak fast and energetic. Both are fine. Find what feels comfortable.
Exactly. When you feel comfortable, mistakes reduce naturally because your brain isn't under pressure. You're in a rhythm that fits your personality.
And let's talk about long-term mastery before we finish. True improvement doesn't come from memorizing rare grammar points. It comes from strengthening core foundations: clarity, confidence, rhythm, and natural phrasing.
Yes, and when your foundation is strong, everything else becomes easier. You start noticing your own mistakes without feeling stressed. You correct yourself automatically. You begin speaking in smoother sentences.
And that's when English stops feeling like a subject and starts feeling like a skill. Something you use, not something you study.
And I love that transformation. When students reach that stage, they no longer fear mistakes. They know mistakes actually help guide their improvement.
So, if you're listening right now, remember, mistakes don't define your English level. Your willingness to keep speaking, keep practicing, and keep improving that defines your fluency.
Exactly. Speak more, listen more, be kind to yourself. Fluency is a journey, not a race.
And that brings us to the end of part 3 and the complete 1-hour podcast on common English mistakes and how to correct them.
We hope this conversation gives you clarity, confidence, and encouragement on your English journey.
Thank you for spending this time with us, and remember, every mistake you make today is a step toward better English tomorrow.
Keep practicing, keep speaking, and we'll see you again in the next episode.
Like, share, and subscribe for more video.